That's good. Testing.
Oh, we're on? Oh, I didn't see you on air. Go on. No problem. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks a lot, everybody, for being here today. My name is Avery Ruff. I'm the chairman of the Building Black Wealth initiative here at Asbury Community Church, and I just want to welcome everybody here for our final segment of the season as we go down this journey to financial freedom. Today we have, which is extremely important, of estate planning basics, and we have our member attorney Valerie Jones here, as well as a special guest, Ms. Arnita Green from Green Tree Financial Solutions, that's going to go over the trust portion, because as we gain wealth, we still have to learn how to hold on to it and learn how to pass that down. And you know, it's extremely important. So I'm not going to belabor that too much or whatever, no, but we want to get started because we have a lot of information. So Ms. Jones, here we go.
Good morning. I want to say thank you to Pastor Blackwell for allowing me to close out this session. I don't know if it's they saved the best for last or the hardest topic for last. It's going to be it's a basic conversation. At any time during the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to just interrupt. I want to allot time for Ms. Green to be able to do her portion as well. So I'm just going to kind of get started. Let me ask this question. How many people here have a will? Okay. How many people, I'm not going to ask the opposite question because I can deduce from those answers. How many of you have updated your wills? Okay, all right. So today is just kind of a basic thing. I suspect that a lot of the information that I'm going to present today, you probably already know. There's probably some things you do not know or you will learn today, but obviously that is the intention that we learn. So let's get started. Okay. Over the past 9 months, we have learned how to fix our credit, how to get out of debt, how to purchase our first home, and how to start a business. If you were successful in any of these areas, you now need to know how to protect those investments or those assets. A good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children, okay? And I remember when my father was preparing to transition, he was very big on making sure that he left something for his children, and he was pretty adamant. He didn't have a lot, but he had a home, and he wanted to make sure that he was able to leave something. And he kind of stood by the scripture. So it's important that the information that we are providing today is biblically based, because we should be leaving things to our children's children or to whomever you like. But if you don't do it the right way, the state of New Jersey will get it, okay? So what is an estate? An estate includes real property, personal property, tangible and intangible property. Intangible property are things such as stocks, bonds, and things of that nature. So who has an estate? Everybody, okay? How many people here probably never really gave thought to the fact that they have an estate? Okay? And we do, no matter how big or how small it is. If you have a home, if that's the only asset you have an estate. Okay? It's an asset or something that you want to leave to someone when you leave here. Okay? What is estate planning? Very simplistic terms, estate planning means to plan your estate. You want to be able to protect as much of your assets as possible from being taken, and you want to be able to control what happens to your estate after you die. Plain and simple, okay? And one of the things that I've discovered over the years practicing as an attorney and doing real estate, a lot of this is because we're not prepared. We don't prepare properly, okay? Okay, so one of the things I'm going to focus on today is one form of protection is a will, okay? Some of you've already indicated that you have one. And a will, again, it's nothing fancy. A lot of stuff that I'm talking about today, you already know, okay? I'm just kind of solidifying and kind of clarifying and adding some things. So a will is a legal document that helps you financially take care of your beneficiaries. Now, throughout the process, a lot of terms we use interchangeably, so being the lawyer that I am, I try to make sure we use terms correctly, okay? So a lot of times you hear people say beneficiary versus an heir. And the basic difference is, if technically in a legal sense, if you have a will, the people in the will are going to be called your beneficiaries, okay? If you don't have a will, those individuals will be generally referred to as heirs. But the terms are used interchangeably, so there's not a right or wrong way, but just as a lawyer, I like to try to do stuff the correct way. Okay, now I'm going to talk about various types of wills. Simple will is really just a standard will, and I'm going to tell you about some alternative types of wills, but at the end of this portion of the presentation, you're going to learn that the alternative types of wills, just stay away from them because they're more problematic than just a standard will. So, a simple will or standard will describes your debts, your identity, who you are. It contains enough information to clearly identify that the document is your will. Now, most of you looked at your will and said, I, so-and-so, bequeath to so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. So the magic, pretty legal language that's in the will, and that's just introductory information. It names your beneficiaries, individuals, and institutions, and contains enough information so that whoever is reading your will can figure out who you are and who you are referring to, okay? It's interesting because a lot of times we always think about individuals or people that we're going to leave things to. You can leave things to institutions, such as your church. You can leave it to charities, and I don't know if a lot of people have given much thought to that, but you can, in fact, leave things to institutions, okay? It names the person you are appointing to be your personal representative of your will. Now, again, here's another term that most people are familiar with the term executor, executrix. Nowadays, most people are going to use the term personal representative, okay? But again, neither right or wrong. If you see the term administrator or administratrix, that's because you died without a will, okay? So those are kind of clues in terms of terminology when you see those, okay? Same thing. One of the things I will say to you about appointing a personal representative, and there's a whole section, but it would have taken up way too much time. But the key part to appointing a personal representative is you must trust, and I really mean trust that individual, okay? Because you're entrusting them with your stuff, your assets, and you're trusting them to carry out your last wishes, okay? And I'm sure we all can think of either personally or through friends or family where we've heard horror stories. I mean, it's caused rifts in families. I know people who've been appointed POAs, power of attorneys, and feelings have been hurt because the oldest sibling wasn't chosen as the POA. There's no right or wrong way, but it is a matter of trust. And if you, even with a POA, if you have one, same standard applies. You really have to trust that person because they, in essence, become you. Okay, so don't do, oh, well, it's because she's my sister and her feelings will be hurt. Her feelings may be hurt, but your estate may get taken, okay, or stuff may be squandered. So the only point I'm really going to stress on that is really trust who it is that you're going to use as your personal representative to take care of. A simple will includes instructions as to who will care for your minor children, pets, or anyone else that you are legally, and legally is capitalized because you may have a moral obligation to want to leave something to somebody or things of that nature, but at the end of the day, if there are children above, you only really are responsible for the people that you're legally responsible to, okay? But again, those are things you should kind of pay attention to in the process. Okay, now we talked about the simple will. Simple will identifies how you want your assets distributed and to whom. A simple will should be typewritten or printed. Now, I'll say that because there's such a thing as called a holographic will. And does anyone know what a holographic will is? Simply a handwritten will, okay? You just write it yourself, okay? And holographic wills are valid in the state of New Jersey, okay? But again, I'm going to ask you to kind of stay away from those things. There's another type of will called a joint will. And a joint will is simply a single legal document that applies to two people, usually a husband and wife. Married couples are not required to have a joint will, and is generally not recommended because courts will often look at them as a contract between the parties. And while the parties are living, if you and your spouse or someone you entered into a joint will with, you can change those things while you are alive, and you'll hear the term revocable or irrevocable. And revocable means you can change it, irrevocable means you can't. So if you have a joint will, and it's one document, and that person passes away before you, and then you read and say, oh, I want to change something, can't change it. So again, it's an option, but generally we would probably not recommend that you do that. In addition to a joint will, you have what is also called a mutual will. And basically it's just, let's say husband and wife, so you don't do a joint will. But if you want to have, my mother and father had the same identical will, but they were just two separate documents, and they said the exact same things except as to who became the executor. If my father predeceased my mother, she would take over. If she predeceased him, he would take over. But the wills were just two separate documents. So mutual wills are in essence basically two simple wills or two standard wills prepared by two separate individuals, okay? A non-coputive will, which is basically a technical term for saying it's an oral will. You could simply say to somebody, I'm going to leave so-and-so X, Y, and Z, okay? And all you do is have to speak to somebody, okay? And if you kind of watch TV and you see these dramatic scenes where they have these deathbed confessions or these deathbed wishes or last wills and testament, that's usually what it is. But again, a lot of these things create challenges. When we talk about the probate process, all of these non-standard or traditional types of wills are going to cause you a lot of problems in the probate process. So again, You can use them, but I would highly recommend that you do not. Any questions? Okay. Now, what's contained in a will? Okay, a will is composed of a number of clauses that when you put together in a single document accurately, precisely represents your wishes for your estate. Pretty simple. I mean, nothing, you know. You have what's called the opening clause, and again, I bequeath to so-and-so, this is my last will and testament, blah, blah, blah. And it just tells you about you and lays out the foundation for the other clauses in your will, okay? It's going to identify you as the reader. It's going to identify you to the reader of the will. It's going to indicate that you executed the document of your own free will and explicitly states that any wills previously created are now no longer valid. So you'll see, it'll say something like, and any previous wills are hereby revoked, okay? So again, just introductory, making it clear that it is you are preparing it, and that you executed it. And usually it'll have something like, you might have your last 4 digits of your social security number on there, something to identify, because at some point this will is going to go down to the surrogate's office and be probated, and they have to be able to verify that it is in fact you, okay? And family statement clause, which is inside the opening statements, this identifies your family members referenced in the will, are introduced in the clause. This is kind of also includes the tax clause, which tells you how your taxes are to be paid, funeral expenses, things of that nature. So pretty self-explanatory. Okay, the giving clause, which is the bulk of your will. This is the section where you're going to lay out what you have, who gets what, okay? And believe it or not, sometimes who doesn't get what. And I'll touch on that in a minute, because believe it or not, you can actually exclude someone, but we'll kind of talk about that. we'll talk about that. Now, in the giving clause, there is, you're going to have what's called a real property clause that relates to your real estate. You're going to have a personal property clause that relates to your personal property. Now, you may not be able to inventory every single item in your house, and if you have a lot of stuff, you're probably saying, well, how am I going to identify all of that? You may identify the things that are of significant value, your house, your car, your jewelry, your artwork, all of those things that people probably have accumulated over the years. And let's say, oh my God, you pass away, your personal representative is looking at the will and saying, oh, they didn't list this item in the will. That's what the residuary clause is. It's kind of that leftover clause. So technically, your will's residuary clause covers the leftover in your state that you did not explicitly mention in the real property clause or the personal property clause. The residuary clause gives you and your will a safety net to use in case you forget to specifically identify some part of your estate in your will. So it is very important that you don't forget to include a residuary clause. So those of you who have a will, just go home and check. There's probably a language in your clause that says it's identified as a residuary clause. Okay, we talked about the personal property clause. You also have the clause of appointment of a fiduciary, which is where you identify your personal representative. Okay, the ending clause, this is kind of where the lawyer kicks in, because you have to make sure everything is correct. So in the ending clause, it helps to make your will valid by making sure that all the statutory requirements have been met. That's where you have your signature, you have the signatures of your witnesses, and if it's going to be notarized, and it's all notarized, okay? If you pick your witnesses to witness your will, please make sure that they are not beneficiaries of the will. They need to be disinterested parties or individuals, okay? For example, let's say someone is in a nursing home, and I remember when my dad did his POA, he was in a rehab center, and he had, let's say, 2 nurses that worked there come in, and they witnessed him signing his POA along with the witnesses that were there. So another reason it's important that these individuals become disinterested is because we're going to get to the section where we talk about probate. A lot of people, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of probate, and a lot of people are, oh my God, probate, blah, blah. Probate will be less problematic if we do stuff the right way. and one of my experiences as an attorney is a lot of reasons people have legal trouble is because they don't do stuff the right way, okay? Now, when we talk about the ending clauses of the will in terms of people have the question, do I notarize or do I not notarize my will, okay? And in the legal parlance, it's usually called self-proof. So most states recognize that a will can be self-proved, which is really just basically having a notary, okay? In New Jersey doesn't necessarily require that you have your will notarized for it to be valid. Now, again, moving forward to talking about probate, it's going to be a lot easier to probate a will if it's been notarized. Because in the event someone is disgruntled or someone feels like you slighted them in your will, nothing you can do, you're not here. But your personal representative is going to have to deal with that issue. So, if, let's say you don't notarize your will, and it's still a valid document, assuming all the clauses have been properly drafted and things of that nature. Someone says, oh, well, because the will has not been notarized or self-proved, the probate court is going to possibly require the personal representative to go find the witnesses. Now, what if the witnesses are dead? You're going to have a problem. So, when I do stuff for people, I advise them, just simply notarize it. It's not that much of an extra step, and it will make it easier during the process for your personal representative. And again, like I said, it'll speed up the probate process. Okay. Changing or amending or revoking a will. Don't make the mistake of putting your will away and forgetting about it, okay? You must make sure that at all times that the details of your will reflect changes in your life that occurred after you initially executed your will, okay? Usually they'll recommend just when you change your smoke detectors or you check the batteries in your smoke detectors, that you also update your will or review your will to make sure whether or not you need to make any changes, okay? I won't confess that I do or do not do that as a lawyer, but it's a good practice just to check it because, number one, the things in your estate may have increased in value, things in your estate may have changed or decreased in value, people that you've identified as beneficiaries in your will may have predeceased you and things of that nature. So you want to get in the habit of checking your will and updating it as needed, okay? And the same thing, you should also, while you're updating your will, you should check your trust, your POAs, should also be reviewed as well. And your beneficiary designations on your things that will fall outside of probate, okay? Your will is dynamic, it's a living document because the law changes and life changes, so your will should change along with those life changes, okay? What are some of the times that you want to consider updating your will? After a marriage, after a divorce, after a spouse's death, after the death of one of your heirs or dependents, after you experience a significant change in the value of your estate, or after any other life changes that would require you to kind of reevaluate who you want to leave things to. So I think pretty simple things. We may not always think about them, but again, pretty simple things that we should do to kind of keep your will current. Okay. Now, make changes or amendments to your will after life changes and not after an emotional reaction that may dissipate over time. Okay, everybody laughs, right? My sister, she aggravated me today. I'm going home. I'll fix you. I'm going to take you out the will. That's not a reason to change your will. It happens. You see these things on TV. You think, that won't happen to me. I'm sure almost everybody in this room, if it hasn't happened to you personally, you know someone. Something happens, and the loss of a loved one is hard enough in itself. Okay, the emotions are there, and it's from a believer standpoint, it's supposed to be a time of celebration. But people are fighting. People are running to the house to see what they can get. And you're doing things, and the ugliness comes out. And if you want to, let me say this, Some of these things, if there are people who are going to challenge your will or your decision, you're not going to be able to stop them. But you can certainly protect your estate and your loved ones by having your stuff in order. But again, you had a blowout with your husband, so you're going to go write him out the will. And we're going to talk about that because you probably can't do that. Okay? And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But change it because there was a significant life change, not because you're mad at somebody. Okay? Because you can change it yourself. You may have an attorney, whatever choice. But that again, is not a reason to change your will. Okay? All right. How do you change your will? Okay? You can change your will in one of two ways. You can create an entirely new will that supersedes your current will, or you can change your will by simply using a codicil. Okay? And that's where you might want to make some minor changes. Someone came to me not too long ago. They wanted to change their personal representative because of some health issues. So we just created a codicil removing James or whoever the person may be and appointing Jane to be the new personal representative. Physically, it's a separate document, but you don't have to change the entire will, okay? Now, when to use a codicil? When your original will is very long and you want to make only a few minor changes. If God has blessed you and you came to all the seminars that we did over the last 9 months, you might have a very long will, okay? So you may say, well, I don't really want to change all of that. I just want to change a couple of things. Now, the practicality of it is that whether you do it yourself or you have an attorney or whoever else may prepare your will, these things are probably in some kind of Word document, so it doesn't really take long to change them. But again, you don't really need to change them all the way if it's just a few things you want to change, okay? Okay, now, one of the things that's good about a codicil is, let's say a disgruntled heir or beneficiary says, okay, let's say you got mad at your sister, so you called your lawyer, you said, I want to take her out of the will, and she's not getting the car anymore, she's not getting whatever. She can't have the jewelry. So you create a codicil, and the codicil says, Sister Sue can't have the bracelet or whatever the case may be, okay? Now, for whatever reasons, you put the new codicil in, it's all legit, and we're assuming everything is legitimate, and you pass away. Now, Sister Sue's like, oh man, I'm getting that pretty bracelet. Oh, it looks so nice on her wrist. You know, first of all, you're looking in the casket to make sure it ain't there. Okay? And I'll tell a quick story. But anyway, so now you've created the codicil. Now, Sister Sue, you know, everybody thinks you're having this big dramatic reading of the will. It really doesn't happen that way, but whatever. Sister Sue realizes, hey, I'm not getting the bracelet. And she sees, now Sister Sue's going to challenge the codicil. She's going to change it because she said, well, she wasn't competent when she did it. My brother was over there. He was twisting her arm, blah, blah, blah. Now, it goes to court, probate court, whatever, superior court, and the judge says, okay, we agree she wasn't competent at the time the codicil was entered. Does that mean the whole will is invalidated? No, just the codicil. Okay, so if you made a minor change to your will based on an emotional reaction and it goes to probate, chances are it may very well be overturned. Okay, but again, don't make those decisions on emotion. Okay, you know, and that goes without saying in general things in life. Okay, now protecting your loved ones. Okay, it's easy to say, oh, I'm leaving this to so and so, and I leave this to so and so. Now, so you didn't do the codicil for Sister Sue, but you don't want Sister Sue to get anything. So you decide you're just going to leave her out. Now, there's actually a clause in some wills. You can put a clause that I mean, if you're worried about going to heaven, you probably don't want to put this in your will, but if you say, there's actually a line in a will where you can say, I am intentionally leaving so-and-so, so-and-so out of my will. Well, I mean, when you do that, please have a prayerful and thoughtful decision about putting that in your will. But you can specifically leave someone out. Will it hold up? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is, don't do it. Okay, if you want to use your will is to protect your assets when you leave here, to pass it on, to be an inheritance. It's not a tool to get back at people. It's not a tool to say, I'll get you from the grave. That's not what it's intended for, okay? And I'm not going to say as people, but that's not what it's for, okay? But if you want to leave a message to maybe with someone that you didn't care for as much, you can do that, and it can be valid by simply leaving them a token sum. Just simply say, okay, Sister Sue, I leave to Sister Sue $1.50. Okay, you left her something. She could challenge it, but she may have a hard time because you specifically included her. You didn't specifically exclude her. So by leaving her a small sum, you've left her something. So if she wants to challenge it, a probate court may say, well, you know what? It's legal. She left you something. It's not that she didn't name you. You're just not happy with what she left you. Okay? But again, I keep stressing the point. This is really not what the purpose of a will is. Okay? If you're going to have those conversations and those actions, do them while you're alive. Okay? You can tell Sister, so I'm not leaving you nothing. Okay? But then you can leave her $1.50 or whatever the case may be. But it's better to specifically include her than to specifically exclude her. Okay? Okay. Again, same thing. If you want to just give her something minor. Now, you can also minimize Sister Sue's challenge by including a no contest clause in your will. And a no contest clause basically says that if they contest what you did leave them, now they get nothing. Okay? I'm giving you the whole picture because that's what I do as an attorney. I give you the good and the bad. But you don't have to do those things. Okay? If God blessed you while you were here and you want to be a blessing to somebody else, just do it the right way. Okay? You can leave them something, but you're not going to be here to hear the fight, but you can imagine what the fight is going to be. All right? Okay. My clicker's not working here, Tim.
Click it again.
Click it again? Let's see.
You know what? That's my fault. I put the second. Okay.
All right. Any questions so far while he's doing technical? Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, the solution to that is you probably should have a secondary personal representative listed in the will. Okay, most people only have one. I was at a presentation the other day where they actually talked about you could have co-representatives. I probably wouldn't do that because they both have to be, so you would have an alternative personal representative. So you can do that by listing it in the will itself. No, you simply, good point, because what should happen is when someone is appointing, wants you to be their personal representative, they really should be having a conversation with you. So you'll know it ahead of time, and they'll know ahead of time whether or not you are able to do it or you don't want to do it. Because it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work. So when you are making those decisions, have a conversation. Have an honest conversation with someone so that they know what it entails. And when you leave here, you'll have a better idea, so you'll be able to say, hey, I ain't doing that. Okay, Pastor?
Yeah, this is a question that's coming from somebody in North Dakota. I'm just joking. They wanted to ask that in a situation of a blended family, how do you guarantee that that property will go directly to your children if your spouse dies before you?
Well, first of all, I got to determine how the deed is drafted. Okay, if there are husband and wife and the deed says joint tenancy by the entirety, it's going to go to the other spouse. Okay, now theoretically, you probably could with an attorney, you could probably draft it in such a way that you could get around it, but you got to always start with whose name is on the deed and how it's going to pass. Because if you have a deed that says joint tenants by the entire, that only applies to a husband and wife. So it's to say it's analogous to a joint tenants with right of survivorship. Those two types of ownership interests are going to pass outside probate. You can't will if I'm a joint tenant with Miss Green, if she and I are joint tenants on a property and she predeceases me, she could, while we're both living, she could say in her will, I want my interest in the property to go to my children. She can write it, but it's not going to have any validity because of the right of joints. The right of survivorship means when she passes, it automatically comes to me. Now, once I become the sole owner, I can do whatever I want with it. I can now include it in my will, and I can give it to whomever I want. So the person has a situation where they want it to go to their children. They need to make sure the deed gives them the proper authority to do so. Correct? Yeah. So they can do it, but it takes a little. But if they're married, you gotta kind of get around the tenancy by the entirety, and I'd have to check. They may be able to waive that, or they may be able to specify in the will that we give up, or they could rewrite the deed first. I would probably say if that's the way the deed is written, you could possibly change the deed so that that right of survivorship interest is not there. Okay, but as long as that right of survivorship issue is there, they cannot will that to anybody until you become the sole owner. Did I see another question? Your husband predeceases you, correct? And let's talk about, you want to talk about the house, if there's a real estate involved, correct? Okay, so let's start with the real estate first. First thing you have to do is you have to check the deed and see how the property was deeded to if it was husband and wife and it says by tenants by the entirety, and the state may assume it's by tenancy by the entirety. Once your spouse predeceases you under those circumstances, you are now the sole owner. So that property, the house comes to you. Children can't do anything about the house. That's going to you. Now you can create your will. You can update your will if you want to leave them in interest. But if you're saying there are now other children, let's say, that are not your children, and they want to put a claim to that, they're probably not going to be able to make a claim to the house because the deed, you're the owner. Okay, now as it relates to bank accounts, got to check your documents. Who was the listed beneficiary? That, and Miss, I was going to pronounce her name wrong, Arnetta, right? Arnetta, I'm never going to get it right. Arnetta's going to talk about those things as well, about what passes outside of probate. But for bank accounts, you need to see who's listed on it. Was there what's called a POD, pay upon death? Whoever's listed on the bank account as a pay upon death, that's where it's going. So if that child is not named, like let's say your husband had a bank account separate from you, right? And he listed the children as the POD, they're going to get what's in the bank. Okay, there's nothing you can really do about that. Now, if you're a joint owner on the account, that's a little bit different situation. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the laws, but generally, it's going to depend on those. The first thing you got to check if there are legal documents, contracts, bank accounts, anything that requires a contractual relationship. That document is always going to control. Okay. Any other questions before I move on? Oh, I'm sorry. Will it? Because the minute you put somebody on a deed, they have an ownership interest, and they can. If you put somebody on the deed, let's say there are two of you. Now each of you base has a 50% interest. They can refinance the house. they can take out a mortgage. They don't have to tell you. Okay, so even when maybe, let's talk about you want to give something to your children, you want to maybe do a quit claim deed and you want to add a family member, so don't, if you want to keep your house, don't do it.
Another reason why that's not advised to do, like say if for some reason, God forbid, you get in an accident or something, if somebody sees it, they can sue and get put in the house too, because your name is in that as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, you don't want to have your children on the deed, even though a lot of people think they're trying to do the right thing, because they don't understand how it works, that you can put yourself in a bind as well as your family members.
Correct. All right. I'm going to move on because I want to give, I'm going to call her Ms. Green because I'm never going to pronounce her name correct. I don't know why. All right, so. Oh.
Just one more question,
Sure.
if you don't mind. In reference to will and beneficiaries for life insurance, if the life insurance beneficiary is irrevocable and revocable, can the will supersede the revocable?
No. Yeah, but what kind of account is it again?
Just a life insurance
Okay,
policy?
yeah, it can't, well, that's going to fall outside of the probate process because on your life insurance policy, you have designated a beneficiary, okay? That document, unless you update your beneficiary designation, whoever's listed on that life insurance policy is getting the policy.
So the will can't
No.
change the
No.
revocable? Okay, good.
Cannot. Okay. Now, couple things I want to move because I want Ms. Green to be able to do her portion. Let's talk about, okay, when we talk about the, oh, I saw somebody waving back there? Okay. All right. So that you're clear, state laws, not federal laws, govern your will. So the state of New Jersey and the laws in the state of New Jersey control your will and the probate process. But I want to move through a couple quick statutes that you may not be familiar with. One is called an abatement statute, okay? And what this is, covers situations when, what happens when your estate isn't worth enough to provide what you want to leave your beneficiaries and to satisfy any remaining debts at the time of your death, okay? So abatement is defined as a process of reducing or increasing something. So if during the process your value of your estate changes and you pass away and your personal representative goes to settle your estate and there's not enough there, an abatement statute will kick in, okay? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I just want to make you aware of some of these statutes, okay? Okay, an abatement statute typically provides for distribution priority in the event that the assets in your state, so the state has a hierarchy to determine who will get what and if there's going to be any substitute designation or distributions or transfers, okay? Now, abatement statutes determine how your will's property is transferred. Now, a lot of times when people are leaving things, they say, we'll say you have $150,000 in a bank account, right? God has been good, right? So you have $150,000. You say you have two children. I'm going to leave $50,000 to Jane. I'm going to leave the other $100,000 to Sally. Now, during the course of your life, things happen, and at the time of your death, you no longer have $150,000. And then the abatement statute kicks in, and now the state has to determine how much who gets what. Well, because you use the dollar amount, it's going to be a little more difficult. Not that it can't happen, but the best way to do it is to do percentages. Okay, so I'm going to leave Sally 50%. I'm going to leave Jane 50%. So do it that way, because then if the statute kicks in, the state can look at what's there and they say, okay, well, 50% of whatever the total value of the estate is how we're going to separate and make the distribution. But this is kind of where the state kind of kicks in a little bit to help to kind of to protect you. We also have what is called an redemption statute. What happens if some of your property is missing when you die? Regardless of the reason, whether you sold stuff or somebody stole stuff from you, I don't know. If your will refers to property that is not part of your estate when you die, that property is considered to be missing or redeemed, and this statute will kick in, okay? So again, all of this kind of goes back to my comment about updating your will, okay? you can, in the event that that happens, my suggestion is that you simply include a backup property for some or all your property. So if you had a car and you were going to leave the car to your grandchildren, the car gets totaled and you never replace it, but you don't update your will, you probably could say, well, in the event the car is no longer available, I'm leaving my grandchild $1,000 for a deposit on a car. So you can always have a backup situation. Pretty much what I will say to you when you're drafting your will, the more specific and explicit you can be, the easier it's going to be for your personal representative to walk through the process and make these determinations and try to, again, keep the state's involvement in your probate to a minimum, okay? We also have what is called an anti-lapse statute. What happens if one of your beneficiaries dies before you do, and you didn't update your will? Well, you should consider naming a contingent beneficiary. Okay, I left my grandson $1,000 to get a car. The grandson, unfortunately, something happened. If my grandson predeceases me, $1,000 is to go to Asbury Community Church. Okay, you can always have a contingent, you can put a contingency beneficiary. Okay, and that's some of the language. Okay, we're going to move that because I've done that. Okay. Something called, I'm not even going to touch this because this is even too complicated for me as an attorney, but just in case you know, there is a statute that's called a simultaneous death statute. That means if certain people die at the same time. Not even going to try to touch that, okay? But I do want to do the divorce thing because I think this is practical and important, and then I want to kind of move on. Okay, your spouse automatically has a claim to part of your estate after you die. Okay, so we talk about, I'm going to leave my husband out because he didn't buy me a Mother's Day gift, blah, blah, blah. Can't do that. You can, you want to validate it, it's not going to happen, okay? If you are married, you're married. Okay, so if you live in New Jersey, in common law state, New Jersey is a common law state, your spouse is entitled to claim a percentage of your assets. In New Jersey, it's called the spousal elective share, okay? And what that means is, by statute, a spouse has a right to take an elective share against the estate. A minimum inheritance a surviving spouse is entitled to, I think in New Jersey, is about is a third of what we call the augmented estate. And an augmented estate basically is, let's say you have a spouse and they're pretty savvy and they have a high-powered attorney or a very smart attorney, and they've created their estate plan. They know you're going to get something, but they're going to give you as little as they possibly can. So they move accounts around, whatever they may do. Doesn't matter. When the state goes to execute the elective share, they're going to go back and they're going to put those values of those things back in to increase the value of the estate, and that's what they're going to use. So you can try to hide it because you're trying to get back at your spouse, but if it's done the right way, the state's going to find it, and that's the figure that they're going to use. That's what an augmented estate is, okay? So it's really the gross amount despite somebody trying to hide stuff, hide things from you, okay? And the rationale behind this statute is states that use the augmented value are trying to protect a surviving spouse from that spouse's husband or wife who's deliberately trying to reduce the value of an estate and trying to leave as little as possible to a surviving spouse. Okay, what you can't do through the front door, you might try to do through the back door, but they're going to figure it out, okay? Under the spousal share statute, your spouse gets a choice between accepting the amount you specified in your will or the amount allowed by statute. So let's say you leave them something and it's less than what the state would give them. They can elect to take the higher amount. So let's assume you give them more than what the state allows. They can take that, or they may take lower. Everybody can, why would I take less? Well, there may be tax reasons why you might take less. Okay, but the point is, your spouse is getting something. Okay. If your will specified that your spouse, okay, we've kind of done that, all right? Okay, so here's the important part, okay, because some of the lifestyles that people live comes out at the funeral, right? So who is a spouse, okay? When discussing the topic of spouses, it is important to understand that the law applies to an individual that has legally, emphasize the word legally, Not common law, not because you hold them out in public. Doesn't happen in New Jersey, okay? Legally has been married in the eyes of the state, which means you got a marriage certificate, you got the blood test, you were married by someone who's authorized to officiate the marriage ceremony, and you receive a marriage certificate. That's your spouse, okay? Plain and simple. I don't care what you, okay, so who is a spouse? Not a spouse, not your boo, not your baby daddy, not someone, not common law. It doesn't happen. But, and it's important, and I put it because it's true, but now people may be divorced and say, oh, we just separated. Well, they're still your spouse. They're still your spouse. So listen, if you were properly married in the eyes of the state of New Jersey, it is logically follows that you need to be properly divorced, okay? Being separated is not the same thing as being divorced, okay? So if you separate and you die during that separation and you didn't change none of your documents, guess who's getting your stuff? Your spouse. Your spouse. Your spouse. Nobody else. Okay, so when all these people show up at the funeral and they bring in the parade, ask them, there was a song, he's got paper. Who has the papers? Because at the end of the day, that's the person, it's like playing cards. Boom, trump the card. I got papers. So you, whatever, okay, I'm gonna leave it alone. Anyway, being separated is not the same thing as being divorced, okay? If you are separated at the time of your death, the law will recognize the legal spouse as your spouse. So that legal spouse will get the elective share. You can say, oh, we ain't been together for 20 years. Well, but you never went down. Not only did you not update your will, you did not go and get a legal divorce. Okay, there needs to be something at the courthouse that says a judgment of final divorce. If you don't have it, they're your spouse. I don't care what you tell people. Yes. Okay, any questions? We good? Okay. Yes.
If you move to another state,
Mm-hmm.
is that a cost to update your will?
It depends on what you do in the other state. If you buy another house in another state, you may need to update your will because I'm going to talk about that. If it's called ancillary probate. If you have, wherever your physical house is, that's where the real estate will be probated. Wherever your tangible property will be probated in that state. So if you have a vacation home somewhere and you pass away, the state where the second home is, that has to be probated in that state. Okay?
And just one other quick thing. Do you recommend having an attorney set up your will and estate, or can you do it online?
Okay, good question. You can do it online, and I'm not a big proponent of trying to make money or whatever. You can do it online, but have it reviewed. And there are enough agencies and organizations that you can go to that it won't charge you anything. So if you find your county seat or something, yeah, I'm almost done. If you have a county seat or whatever, you can do it that way, but it never hurts to have an attorney at least review it, okay? Yes, go ahead.
So I just wanted to add to, like, if you have property in different states, then that property will go to the probate in each state. So you'll have a probate in that state, you'll have a probate in the state you're currently in. So each state that you have real property, it will go through probate.
Technical difficulties, Tim. Okay, so again, that's what they call ancillary probate, okay? Now, what may happen is, you may say, oh, now I gotta file your personal representative, oh, now I gotta do this. There are some states that will allow you to try to minimize the process, and I wanna move, okay. We getting in it? Okay, so we did this, okay? Bottom line is, you're divorced, so please update your will. Now, if you're emotionally, psychologically not ready to accept the fact, even though you have the legitimate papers, the state's gonna kind of protect you. Okay? So for those people who procrastinate because there's still an emotional attachment or whatever, I don't know. Your marriage has ended and you have not updated your will, your state is going to be protected from claims by your former spouse, okay? So there are statutes, and there's sections in the divorce statute that will prevent your ex from going after your estate. But again, you have to be legally divorced. I can't emphasize that enough because people think, oh, well, we ain't been together. It doesn't happen that way, okay? It's not gonna happen. You're gonna create, and the same thing, here's the other part. So let's say you get separated, right? Strike that. You get legally divorced, but you forget to update your life insurance policies. You forget to change your beneficiary designations on documents. Guess who's getting it? Your ex. Your ex, okay? So, again, just be mindful of those things, okay? And these are some quick things that I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Green. Okay, New Jersey, these statutes are intended to protect you, okay? We have what are called, well, New Jersey doesn't have these, but for example, there's what's called a homestead allowance statute, which protects spouses and minor children from having to leave the house after somebody is divorced, right? But New Jersey doesn't have those, so if you want to get a protection for your home, you gotta file bankruptcy, okay? All right, so there are those protections. Did we lose some technical stuff here, Tim?
Yeah, your presentation just said, hey, I'm gonna shut down for a minute.
Okay, all right.
I'll be back.
Okay, well, what I'm gonna do now, I wanna give Ms. or Netta, I'm never gonna get it right, or Nita. I gotta physically look at it. I gotta do. We know what happens when you try to announce people's name at graduation. You don't do it the correct way, right? But anyway, my next quick section is I'm just gonna talk off the top of my head about probate. Okay, everybody says, probate. I don't want to have. Okay, let me say this. Everybody says, well, probate only applies to a will. That is it's just legally wrong. If you understand probate to be a process, every state has a probate process. So the more correct term is you cannot avoid probate. I don't care what anybody tells you. You can move your assets outside of probate. And hence the term avoid probate. It doesn't say eliminate probate, it says avoid. So probate exists whether you have a will or not. And the point is this. If you have a will, the will itself will be probated through the probate surrogate's office and things of that nature. If you don't have a will, the state's going to become your personal representative. The will is still going to be your estate is still going to be probated because probate is an administrative process. So if from today on, if somebody says, "Oh, well, I'm going to do this because I'm going to avoid probate," you can't avoid probate. You can move your assets outside of probate. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Green. Is her thing on here? Did you put her on the PowerPoint?
Yes, let me bring it up.
Okay. Thank you. I'll show you how to use it. Up and down. And you point it back here, the receiver's back.
Okay. All right, good morning, good afternoon. Wasn't that very informative? Yes, let's give her a round of applause. Just want to thank Valerie Jones and Pastor Blackwell for having us here today, as well as being proactive in informing the congregation about these much needed things that we need to start taking care of and paying attention in our own communities, amen? As we begin to earn more wealth, and some of us have the wealth, but we just haven't been educated on what to do to that next step, right? So I want to applaud all of you that I did see hands go up that do have wills. That is the first step, but I'm here to tell you the rest of the story. So just a little bit about me. I have been doing this since about 2018, 2019. I'm a licensed registered pharmacist in a couple of different states. And I have all the traditional retirement vehicles, so 401k, Roth IRA, mutual funds. But something in my heart just said, there's more. There's another part of this wealth piece that I'm missing. And so I started doing research, and I got a life insurance well, let me back up. I prayed about it, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do as believers. We go to the Lord. And so when I prayed about it, within that week, I started getting advertisements for life insurance, like to be a life insurance agent. And I'm like, life insurance? And so I looked into it, And I said, I feel like this is how God is leading me, right? This is a part of the wealth piece that he's trying to share with me. And so I was a pharmacist full-time and a life insurance agent part-time, right? And so as things progressed, then my manager introduced estate planning. And that was when the lights went on. Because then I started doing more research and understood that that's how the Rockefellers kept their money, and the Carnegies had their money, was life insurance and estate planning, right? So for a lot of us in America, all we heard about was the hustle, is to get the money, but then what you do after you get it, right? We gotta pray and ask God to teach us how to manage it, how to keep it, and how to pass it down, right? Because like the word says, we're supposed to leave an inheritance to our children's children, right? Well, it's not just our children's children, it should be for 20 to 30 generations down the line, right? Because we know that God, he plans before we were even born. He knew us in our mother's womb, and he had a plan for us, right? So then we got to go to God and find out what that plan is and how to execute it. And so as I began to research and learn, that's when I understood this is what our people have been missing. And I made it my business to get, so I am not an attorney, but I am very passionate about estate planning and educating our people about this much needed issue. I'm carrying the torch like I'm in the Olympics, okay? So I've been traveling, Arizona, been to Atlanta, now I'm here to just share this information because I want us to be in a better place, right? I don't want us to have to keep starting all over again when we don't have to. I've had counterparts that and you know, when I think back, she mentioned a trust, but it kind of just went over my head. But then when I looked at her daughter, she paid through her life insurance and estate plan, she paid for her daughter's whole education, college education, and then she got her a car, paid cash for that. All this stuff she paying cash for, and I'm thinking like, how is she doing this, right? And she's traveling all over the world, no debt, and I'm just trying to figure this thing out, you know, but then when I start praying about it, that's when it was like, that's what she did. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna set my kids up and I'm gonna help everybody else get set up, because that's how we move it, right? So with that being said, I wanna kind of speed through, but, oh, I got the clicker, that's right. I'm not used to the clicker, but I'll get used to it. So I just want to go over a couple of statistics really quickly. And we're at till 11:30, is that correct? Okay. But just, okay. Now, you know when you up here at the pulpit and they say, take your time, that's like, my father is a pastor, right? So I got a little pastor in me, so y'all want to say that because I might start preaching up here. So I just want to give you guys a little bit of statistics, right? Because it's good to know the whole picture. Okay. So why should we have an estate plan? So Valerie did a wonderful job of explaining all about estate plans and wills. I'm going to talk about some of the other necessary documents that you need to have in your estate plan, as well as a living revocable trust, because that's going to be the centerpiece of your estate plan. Okay, so just as a Gallup poll, only 44% of Americans have a will. And over 75% of estates in America are going to go through a probate court for one or two reasons. One, there's no living will or no trust. The trust is not funded or it's not current. And we did talk about keeping your documents up to date. According to the Smart Money magazine, if you have some assets, maybe a car, home, furniture, also minor children, you still need to have an estate plan, even if taxes are not an issue. And that's what sometimes I hear is people say, well, I really don't have anything. And like I talked to one lady, she has 4 children. She's older, in her 80s. Her house is fully paid off. She's on 4 acres of land. And she says, well, I don't have anything. I'm like, oh no, you have a lot. So I looked up the value of her home, because I do my research. It was like about $350,000, right? I'm like, don't you know that $350,000 invested the right way could change your children's life, right? So it's a mindset change that we need to start having, and how we look at things and value the things that God has already blessed us with. Sometimes we think we don't have things, but we do. I was just reminded, I just want to share, we just flew back home because I'm relocating out here. And so God just told me to give everything away, right? And I'm like, you know, it's been a while since I've been home, because I've been out here since January. And I invited people to come over to just get what they wanted, right? And then I started taking stuff out. I'm like, oh, I got some nice stuff. And so this one lady, she came over. Her whole garage is full of my stuff. Now it's hers, but she said this was the best Mother's Day ever in my life. She got silver, she got china, she got crystal. I mean, Michael Kors bag. I mean, and I'm looking like, God has really blessed me, you know? And so we need to be more mindful of how God has already blessed us, right? And so we have some things. So we have to start taking inventory of what we have. And that was my point, is to start taking inventory. Don't wait till it's too late, right? According to the AARP polls, only 23% of American adults over the age of 50 have a trust. So that's a part of my goal, is to increase that amount to 90% at least, right? And especially in our community. When we talk about businesses, because now, you know, with the event of COVID, everybody and their mama have a business now, right? So according to the U.S. Small Business Administration in 2021, there's about 32.5 million businesses. So we see like Walmart and all these big businesses, but really the bulk of what runs our economy is small business, right? So we got to keep that in perspective. And these small businesses make up 99.9%. That's huge. It's huge. Again, it's all about perspective, right? And business owners have a lot at stake, because a lot of times they're funding or taking care of their home through their business, right? And so those challenges can come up if they're not properly set up as far as their business succession plan, as far as their estate is concerned. And that's what that next slide states. Okay, so why don't more business owners and families have an estate plan? I think I heard somebody out here say, do I need to go to an attorney, or can I do it online, right? Well, you can do all of those things. What I will say is, if you do it online, I know I've talked to so many people who said, I started it, but it got too cumbersome, right? And I don't understand the legalese or the jargon. I don't know if I'm doing it right. And I don't want to mess up, because this is an important issue that I'm dealing with, right? The other thing is attorney costs. They're like, it's going to take about $6,000, maybe up to $10,000 to go to the attorney. I don't have that type of money. And if I do, I want to leave it to my children, right? Or even just to see them is $300 to $500 just for an hour visit, right? So that's a lot. That's a car payment for some people, right? If you put it in perspective, then it's an uncomfortable topic. We don't like to talk about death. We don't want to talk about leaving here, but there are 2 things that's guaranteed, right? Death and taxes, right? So one of the things that when I was here last time is that we need to start having these conversations with our family members, right? I know it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And that's one thing, you know, that we have to get over, that stigma in our communities, is talking about money, right? Because they say the things you talk about is the things you focus on. And it's not in the aspect of money, 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 but having those necessary conversations with your children, with your grandchildren, so that they understand. Sometimes people leave stuff for their kids, and they don't even know it or know what to do with it, because they don't know the value of how hard you work to get it, right? So we have to teach them to have that understanding, right? The Bible says, with all I get an understanding, right? So, you know, that's our part to impart that to our children. Again, it's the time piece, right? It takes a lot of time. We got to work. We got things to do, right? So our lives are already busy. That's just another thing that's on our plate that we got to address, right? So there's probably already things that we're putting to the side because we don't want to deal with it. So those are some of the reasons why we don't get it done, right? And so a part of why I'm sharing this is because we got to understand why we're not doing it so that we know how to fix it, right? Okay. I apologize because my pictures are not representative of my community right now. I will fix that. I was looking at hers. I was like, oh, my people. So, but they're, at the end of the day, everyone has an estate plan, right? Either you got the government's plan or you take the time to set up your own plan. And that's what, who makes the decisions over your assets, your business, your health care, your family's future? Will it be you or the government, right? And we know that the government has their own plan, and it's not always in our best interest, right? So no estate plan, it's going to go to probate, right? So as you see the diagram, it's the assets that you have, it goes through the probate court, and then your family gets what you left for them, okay? The court decides who receives your assets, your business, who cares for your children. Some people are not aware that if you have minor children, the court decides who they go to. So they could go into foster care until the court decides who your children should go to. I had a lady say, you mean when we went before the church and we gave our children to the Lord and had the godparents, that wasn't a legal document that that we got from the church? I said, that was a certificate that they give you, but that's not a binding legal document, So again, it's just education, right? Education. Knowledge is power. So another thing is your private matters become public record. So I don't know, but some people are very inquisitive, to put it nicely, right? So if you don't want people in your business, then you don't want it to go through probate. Another thing is because of the pandemic, things have been backlogged. So things that used to take maybe 6 months, 3 months are now taking years. So you could be caught up in this probate process for years. Or your family members that you left things to could be caught up in this process for years. I feel like I want to click the screen instead of over here. Okay, so that's what we talked about. And then we talked about having probate in multiple states too. And then you got to think about that. If you just think through the process, okay, if you have probate in multiple states, that's multiple attorney fees, that's multiple inspection fees, that's multiple administrative fees. So you can see how that can add up very quickly. So these are just an example of some of the costs of some of the fees. So you have filing fees, legal notice fees, bond fees, personal representative fees, attorney fees. Another thing I want to share too is that a lot of estate planning, God bless you, attorneys are also probate attorneys. So they help people, and I'm for attorneys, so don't get me wrong, but I need to share with you the information. They help you to get your estate plan together, but they don't help you fund the trust. So if you don't fund the trust, it still goes to probate, okay? And then some of those attorneys that are also probate attorneys will have their administrative down at the probate court, and again, they're getting those fees on the other end. So they're getting them in the front, and they're getting them at the end. So this is just another example of how much it costs and how long it takes and the loss of privacy that you may experience. And some of the benefits of avoiding probate, because we want our family to avoid probate. Why? Because they're mourning your loss, right? They're emotional. Now they got to keep going down to the court. They got to leave off of work. If you have children in another state, they got to fly out here. I have heard that sometimes they have been doing it virtually, but it's still a time, it can take time, right? And the paperwork can be stressful. But as a benefit of avoiding probate, you save money because you don't have to do all of that going back and forth. You save your time or their time. The stress of the paperwork and just the overall stress of the process is diminished, and you maintain that privacy for your family, okay? So in order to do that, you have to have a living revocable trust. So what is a living revocable trust? A living revocable trust is a contract. It is also a legal document. It creates a separate entity that will outlive you and eliminate the need for the court. So yes, like Valerie said, it will go to probate court, but then the judge will see, oh, you have a living revocable trust. Let's see what she has in this document. Okay, go ahead and execute it. Okay? It's just that simple. It could be a 30-minute conversation versus years, right? So that's the difference. So again, it's a legal document that creates a new entity. The key is that the living revocable trust has to be funded. When I say funded, that means that the deed has to be changed. Documents have to be put into the trust, okay? The trust will own those assets. If that is not happening in your estate plan, then your estate is still going to go through probate. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay, I'll keep going. Yes?
When you say funded into?
So I'm glad you asked that question. So what that means is, I'll give you an example. So you have a house, right? So what we do is we get your house deed transferred from your name to the trust name. That would be considered funding the trust, because now that deed is in the trust name. So that's just an example, okay? Now, as it relates to like assets that have beneficiaries, we don't put those in the trust because they already have beneficiaries assigned to them. But like Valerie said, if you have like a life insurance policy or any other assets like a 401k or Roth IRA where you need to change the beneficiaries, you need to do that because it will go to that person that you assign. I've had an example where I had a client who had a life insurance policy, and they did everything right as far as the husband and wife. They had 3 children, and they had policies for the children. The husband was the beneficiary. The husband got killed. The children could not get the policies. The wife could not get the policies for the children because the husband was the beneficiary. So in that instance, I always suggest that you put a contingent beneficiary on it as well. You can also put the trust as the beneficiary, okay? Yes? You're the owner. Oh, go ahead, because we're live.
If you put something in the name of the trust, like say a house or a car or something, does that mean it belongs to the trust and it's no longer yours, or how exactly does that work?
So the trust now owns it. It's in the name of the trust, but you are the owner of the trust, okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
If you have a trust, do you also need a will and a trust, or do they supersede each other?
No, so a living revocable trust will supersede a will, but you do still need a will.
Oh.
So you kind of still need to write down, you know,
if you want your grandfather clock to go to somebody specific or, specific things. But inside the living revocable trust, a lot of that will be addressed. Okay?
Have that also in the trust as well as the will, they kind of coincide with each other.
Yes. The big difference is a will still go through the probate process. A living revocable trust, the judge will see that you have a trust. He will say to your successor trustee, the person who you assign to manage your trust, go ahead and execute the trust. You get a certificate of trust that shows that everything is legitimate, okay? But it just saves a lot of time because you don't have to go through that entire probate process because you already have everything listed in your trust.
So if a person has a life insurance policy and the beneficiary then dies and they never claimed the life insurance policy, where does it go?
So in that instance, you would have to call your representative and let them know. But that's why I suggest that you put a contingent on there as well, because if not, then they can't claim it. But you may be able to because you're the owner of the policy. So you'll just have to call your the insurance company and find out.
But the owner is dead also.
Oh, go ahead.
What may happen in that situation is that part of your estate may become intestate. The state may very well treat it as you died without a will, and then the laws of intestate will kick in and there's a hierarchy. So that's most likely what will happen. They will treat that portion as though there was no will. And then the state becomes the personal representative, and based on state law, there's a hierarchy as who gets what, like blood relatives, blah, blah, blah. And it goes down through succession. So someone would eventually get it, but it will be determined by the state.
Yeah, you ever see those advertisements where they say unclaimed money? Yeah. That's what that would be, a part of that. Okay? Okay, so we already talked about this. When you have a living revocable trust, you decide where your hard-earned assets go. You decide who gets your children and takes care of your children the way you would like for them to take care of. I was sitting with a husband and a wife, and they had never had that conversation. And so the wife was like, oh, I thought our daughter, because they only had one child, would go to our neighbor because they're really good friends of mine. And then the husband thought that the child was going to go to his brother. So, that's why you have to have these conversations, because each other might be thinking something totally different, right? And I think somebody had asked about what if you don't want to be the executor of the will. I've had that too. I had a lady come and she said, well, how can I get out of this? Because I really don't want to deal, she was a friend and was trying to help another friend. She said, but I really don't want to because the children, they just fight all the time and I don't want to be a part of that. And I told her, you need to tell her you don't want to be on it, So, and that's about having those tough conversations. But a part of it is that the people who are creating the living revocable trust, having those authentic conversations and letting them know what the expectations and responsibilities are of being in that position, in that role for them. Did somebody else have a question? No? Okay. I've even have some people who have left money in the trust for people who are going to take on that role, because they understand that it's a big responsibility. So they do leave some money there for them to be able to, execute for them. So that's an option too. Okay. So what are some other key documents that you need to have in your estate plan? We talked about our living revocable trust. I just want to point out too that there is a difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. A revocable trust means that while you're living, you can change it at any time. So if you buy your house and then sell it and downsize, you could take that out of the trust, right? Or any of your other assets. If it's irrevocable, it means it cannot be changed, or it's like an act of God that where you gotta get so many different documents signed in order to get it changed, okay? Then you have your last will and testament. That's what you were asking about. So that is in there. And say if you forget something, there's also the pour over will. So because you have your living revocable trust, once you die, it will still go into the trust. The judge and the courts will honor that. Then you have your durable powers of attorney as well. And we're going to get into a little bit more detail about these other three things, or four, and your advanced medical directives. I know if anybody's a healthcare professional here or has already gotten those documents taken care of, advanced medical directives, it's in case you get incapacitated or you have to go to the hospital for any reason, then the advanced medical directives, and I'm skipping ahead, but that's okay. It says what you would like done for you, okay? I'm gonna stay on topic, let me go. So let's talk about the last will and testament. So like I said, the last will and testament is often called a pour over will, like I explained. It is in conjunction with your living revocable trust to convey anything you have forgotten to fund into the trust prior to your death, okay? Any unfunded assets will go through probate first, and then the judge will see that you have the trust, and then will pour over right into your will. Your will will pour all over into your trust, yes. So there are two main durable powers of attorney. The first one is your financial power of attorney, okay? So you have, this is what it looks like. You have your executor of your trust, right? Then, and you assign that person. Then you have someone that you assign as your financial power of attorney. That can be the same person, okay? Or it could be somebody totally different that you know is good with money, okay? The second one would be healthcare power of attorney. Again, that could be the same person or could be somebody different. We also always recommend that you have an alternate, okay, in case something happens to that first person or they change their mind, okay? So durable means that the appointment of the power will endure even after your incapacitation. This power is effective either upon the date of execution of the document or upon your incapacitation, depending on the selection you make in the document. Okay. So the durable power of attorney for finances will give your appointed agent the power to make basic financial decisions regarding assets not funded into your trust, right? Because you've already made those decisions, so you don't want them to come back and try to change anything that you already decided on. But things that are outside of that, they can assist in making those decisions for you, okay? Your agent may use this power to buy and sell non-trust assets, write checks for your non-trust accounts, and he or she could even fund assets into your trust prior to your death to avoid probate, okay? So that you've given them that power to, if there's anything outside of the trust, and you say, well, before I die, put this in here so such and such don't get it, right? So you can do that. You know, we always have our little stash somewhere. The durable power of attorney for healthcare allows your appointed agent to make important healthcare decisions for you in the event of your incapacitation. So you have your advanced medical directives, but what if they're not handy, right? Your healthcare power of attorney would say, well, this is what so-and-so would have liked. This is what, Lord, let me go get that document for you so you have it, right? Because you're incapacitated. You can't tell anybody what you want, right? So somebody has to be able to speak on your behalf. And you still want them to speak on your behalf based on what you decided, not what they feel is, is necessary. And, I had a family member who had a stroke, and her fiance was in the hospital room, and this was during COVID, so he was the only one allowed in there, and she couldn't talk or anything, and they're asking him, should we give her the medication? And he was just like in tears because he's like, I don't know. He doesn't really know because he's not really in healthcare. And he's like, what if I make the wrong decision and she dies? You know, then I have to deal with that, and I don't want her to die, you know, so it just alleviates a lot of emotional stress for our loved ones because we're making those decisions on our own how we want to be cared for, right? It gives you that control. And what was it? What was that one big case? Was it Shriver? Do you guys remember that case a long time ago? Yeah, when she was on life support and the husband was fighting with the parents. Remember that? So if she had had her advanced medical directives, that wouldn't have even been an issue. And that went on, it was like years, yeah. And so these are the type of issues that occur when we don't have the proper documents in place. Any questions? I hope I'm not going too fast, because, no, we good? All right, we'll keep on going. Okay, so living will and advanced directives. We kind of already touched on the advanced medical directives. Living will and advanced directives allow you to determine how you want medical care administered in the case you have a terminal illness or in a comatose state. Another thing too is that now, because of the opioid crisis, you can't even get pain medicine in the hospital if you don't have advanced medical directives. So they have to go. Yeah, that's the very first thing when you go in the hospital, they ask you, do you have advanced medical directives? Because they will help you get some right there in the hospital. Just in case, you know, things don't go the way you planned, right? But, I mean, if you're in pain, who wants to wait to get a document from the court? You know how the court system is, you know? Yeah, we need to be cared for, right? So I'm all about being cared for and being taken care of. And I want my people to be taken care of. So that goes without saying. And this is, but what if I already have a last will and testament? We talked about which document, but as she said, that is a legal document. However, it's still going to go to probate court. And it still can be contested. So which means, say if you have 4 children, right? And one of the children feel that they're slighted and they get an attorney. They can fight that, and that thing can be in court for years. So then nobody gets anything. I also had a client, he called me and he says, I want you to help my grandfather set up a trust. So he's in Arizona, his grandfather was in California. So I called his grandfather, and some of you guys might have heard the story last time, but it's a true story. And it's relevant. So his grandfather was like, oh, well, I already got my daughter on the deed. I already got her on some bank accounts. So I, stressed to him the importance of having a irrevocable trust and the entire estate plan. And so sometimes some people can be ornery. So he's like, well, mail me the information. So I mailed it to him and then called and, kept calling. And then I just went back to my client. I'm like, hey, you need to talk to your grandfather because he's not answering my calls, right? And so a year later, so his grandfather never followed up or called me back. A year later, my client calls and he says, do you know a good attorney that we could get? Because even though his grandfather had a will and it was notarized, the guy who was his witness was there when he died. And so they were doing an investigation. So, these things happen, right? Where you think you've done everything you needed to do, but he didn't know the rest of the story. Or he wasn't open to learning about what else was there to help him, right? So we got to be open to new information too. So what's the solution? Yes? It can, but it's really hard for anybody to go against it. I mean, anything can be contested, right? But it is a legal binding agreement. And once you die, you get an EIN number on that trust. Okay? So what's the solution? With my company, we have an internet-based estate planning technology. So everything's on a digital platform, and I help you walk through the process, okay? Because I know it is a lot, And so that is what I do, is I help you walk through it step by step. We go through everything so that we don't miss anything. Our software is it has attorney drafted state-specific documents down to the county. That's one thing I noticed out here. You cross the street and you in a different borough, right? Yeah, so it's that specific. And the software is updated regularly, so all of the laws are incorporated right into the software. So like it was asked, can you do it online by yourself? You can, right? Or you can go to an attorney and pay a lot, or, you know, if you would like, I could help you walk through that process with the digital technology that we have available. But the process is very simple. We just it's very user-friendly. This is what it looks like. There's the tabs on the side. We just kind of go down each tab, you know, and at the end, we just print all those documents out. We get them notarized, and once they're notarized, we upload it into the account. You get your nice packet as well, paper packet, and your trust is funded, and you are good to go. We make sure you have conversations with your family members so everybody is on the same page, and that's kind of how it works. We also have a special needs trust because, you know, sometimes there are family members who have children that are special needs, or as adults they become special needs. So we are able to provide special needs trusts as well. If you have assets over $5 million, or you have those complex situations where you have blended families, we are able to help you with those as well. And it's all in the software that we have. Once we walk you through all the software, produce all the documents, upload it for you, we give you the keys, the username and the password, you change that, and if you wake up 2 o'clock in the morning and say, oh, I forgot to put that watch in the trust, you can wake up and put it in the trust because you have access to it 24/7, okay? If you don't feel comfortable doing it, you can give me a call, and we can set up a time, and I'll come and help you. People say, well, how long does it typically take? Typically, if you have all your papers in order, it'll be about 2 to 3 hours, okay? If you don't have your paper in order and you gotta find them, it could take maybe about a week or 2 weeks, okay? So it's just a matter of how long it takes you to get all your documents in order. But that's about it. That's all I have. Did I have any more questions before I turn it back over to the team? Yes. Oh, okay. Oh, it's a one. Are we allowed to talk about money here? Okay. I just want to know because I know this is a house of prayer. You know. It's one flat fee of $1,995. It's one flat fee. There is a renewal that next year to maintain the software of $29 for the whole year. So that's it. That's all I have. The company that created this is also the company that created LifeLock. So it's more like a storage fee than anything else, okay? Because it's like it's encrypted in the cloud, okay? Did anybody have any other questions before I turn it over? If you wouldn't mind, I do have a sign-up sheet because I do like to stay in touch with the people who I speak to. So if you wouldn't mind, I do have a sign-up sheet. If you wouldn't mind signing it. Underneath that page, if you would like a free consultation, there is a QR code on the second page. You can just take a picture of that, and it goes right to my calendar. You can just book an appointment with me for a 30-minute consultation on my calendar. Okay? All right. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we close out, there were just one or two things I just wanted to make a mention that's in my presentation. Someone called me the other day. They had a relative pass away, and they received a letter from the state of New Jersey. One of the things when we talk about probate, there's a hierarchy, people that get paid before your beneficiaries, okay? There's something in the state in New Jersey called the Medicaid Estate Recovery Act. And I received a call from a friend of mine, and he said, hey, I got this letter, my aunt passed away about a month ago, what am I supposed to do with this document? And so I looked at it, and the state makes a determination as to whether or not they're going to go against your estate for the Medicaid expenses that they paid while you were alive. Please understand, I'm not going to go to because it's a whole nother subject, but if people receive Medicaid, and there's this whole thing about spend down and blah, 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 there's a whole different subject, but please be aware, if you are dealing with relatives who receive Medicaid, it ain't free. It is in essence a loan from the state of New Jersey. And what they do is, when someone passes, if they've received Medicaid, their estate is going to receive the letter to make a determination as to whether or not the state of New Jersey is going to seek that money back. That's how they fund Medicaid in a nutshell. But it's in essence a loan from the state. So be mindful. You might even want to kind of keep track of medical expenses that are paid under Medicaid, okay? So just as they are a creditor, and the state may even, they basically, in essence, put a lien against the estate till they make the determination. So just be mindful that the state is there, and if people are getting Medicaid, somebody's got to pay it back, okay? Medicaid, okay. Again, I want to thank Mr. Avery Ruff. I want to thank Reverend Dr. Dennis L. Blackwell for allowing us this opportunity. It has been my pleasure. I pray that you have learned some information here today. This will be an ongoing conversation, so obviously those of you who know where I sit back there, you know where to find me, but I can honestly say this. My picture can officially come down off the screen, and I can now return to the Witness Protection Program. Thank you very much.
Oh, Valerie, that was fantastic, fantastic. And Ms. Green, thank you very much for being here as well. And, once again, as Valerie mentioned earlier, we've been on this journey since September. And we started out, and we had Dr. Jolly here, and we went through all the financial components that we need to do in order to gain wealth and pass it on, and no better way to close it out than today. And, as Ms. Green said, and we've been talking all along, that we have to have the conversation. We have to talk about that. And we're going to take a few months off through the summer, but during these times when we have our little get-togethers, our barbecues, family reunions, there's nothing wrong with talking about finances, about how we get our house in order, because the more we are able to conversate with that, the more comfortable we get with that, and then we can come together as a community and be able to hold on to a lot of our wealth, and we can just get a lot of those problems out of the way, when we do move on. So we want to make it as easy as possible as we can with our family. And with that, once again, I want to say thank you very much. I want to say thank you especially to Dr. Blackwell and to Asbury Community Church for the support for those last 9 months that we've had. And once again, we're going to pick this up again in the fall. But in the meantime, Dr. Blackwell.
Amen, amen. Let's give God a hand clapping. Thank the Lord. So thank you so much. Brother Ruff has been our leader, our chairperson for this initiative, and want to thank Sister Valerie, who was a member of the team, and for a presentation today. Steve Taylor, who was from Bowie, Maryland, was also part of our team, and Donna Holmes, who was our scribe. And so we had a good year, and as Brother Ruff has said, we will caucus over the summer and determine what this looks like. We are going to run this program that we did this year in some form or fashion in the ensuing year. We'll know exactly what it's going to look like, in addition to the new initiative that I was dreaming about as I was sitting there listening to you all talk today. Amen. So thank you so much. We're trying to help black folk build wealth. Somebody say build wealth. Amen, build wealth. And this was our Building Black Wealth series. And then we thank all of the tech people who've been with us every month. And just for just the amazing job that they've done and made this all possible. So we're going to pray. Let me invite those of you all who are listening to me via live stream today, and those of you all who are in the sanctuary, that if you are not affiliated with the church, and if you're looking for a place where people are innovative and love God and love community and want to help black folk, then you need to look no further. Amen. Because this is the place. Amen. And we want to invite you to be with us tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock a.m. tomorrow, and to take advantage of all of our activities that we have during the course of the week. So let's pray. Father, thank you for who you are. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for the wisdom, Lord, from our sister Valerie and Ms. Green. Lord, we thank you, Lord God, for their availability and for just sharing some principles, Lord, to help us to reorganize, restructure, reevaluate our lives and our finances, and create wealth not only for ourselves, but for our children and for our children's children. So now, God, as we leave this place, we pray that you would give us travel mercies and travel grace back to our destination. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much.